How do I let go of drinking too much alcohol? How do I let go of not exercising? How do I let go of not sleeping well every night? How do I let go of eating too much sugar?
Talk to me about the lessons learned from this mentor that you had named Alan.
Sure, Max. What's really interesting is I've often heard in the last, 20, 30 years that your life can change in a minute, right? And we know that you can get into a car accident and your life can end in a nanosecond, or it can change. But also, the right person or the right question and the right decision can change your life. So it's before you were born. It's May 1980. Put into perspective, I am 19 years young, working in the shipping department, making $1.65 an hour, opening boxes, closing boxes, shipping boxes, getting them in, being bored out of my mind, hating it. And my brother says, hey, there's this guy that I teach tennis to. My brother's a tennis pro that I think might be able to help you. So I took the train from Montreal to Toronto. We went to lunch with this man, Alan Brown. He asks me, why am I doing the things I'm doing? I said, I don't know. Why don't you stop? I said, because I want to have money in my pocket. I want to have some fun with my friends, and my family can't afford to give me any money. And I'm not making enough money at work. So again, I'm speeding up the story. And then he says to me, he said, what are your vision and your goals? And I said, well, I'd like to get my own car. I'd like to move out of my parents' house. And I'd certainly want to get a better job. He says, well, that's all nice and dandy, but let's go further out, 5, 10, 20 years from now. I was like, I have no idea. So he hands me this document, Max, and it was the 1980 goal setting guide. What the fuck's a goal setting guide, right? So it asks me the first question, how much money do you want to have upon your retirement? Retirement. I'm 19 years old. I want to get a job. Retirement. My father's not even retired. Second question, how much net worth do you want to have upon retirement? And I looked at Mr. Brown and said, Mr. Brown, what does net worth mean? I had no idea. What kind of lifestyle do you want to live? What kind of car do you want to drive? What kind of home do you want? What kind of clothes do you want? Where do you want to go? And I had all of these questions. And so I wrote out, I want to have $3 million net worth when I retire at age 45, 26 years later. I want to travel the world first class. I want to retire my parents. I want a Mercedes Benz. I want a 4-bedroom house. I want Italian clothes. I just wrote all this shit out and I just made it all up. And he looks at it, he goes, this is actually a pretty great lifestyle. And I said, well, thank you. And he leans down or over to me and he says, I'm going to ask you one question, son. And the answer to this question will determine whether you achieve every one of these goals. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, one question is going to determine if I can achieve $3 million net worth, this house, this travel. And he looks at me and goes, are you interested or are you committed to achieving this lifestyle? And I scratched my head a little bit, and I'm like, what? Am I interested or am I committed? And so I looked at him and I said, Mr. Brown, what's the difference? And he leans over, he said, son, he said, if you're interested, you'll keep doing what you're doing. If you're interested, you'll keep using the fact that you left high school in grade 11, you failed English and math, which I just told him. He said, if you're interested, you'll allow your current beliefs and circumstances to control your behavior, which means you're just going to keep re-achieving the same things. If you are interested, you'll do what's easy and convenient. If you're interested, okay, you will not do what it takes to achieve your goals. But if you're committed, you will upgrade, and I'll never forget this, you will upgrade your identity to match the new destiny you want. So you'll upgrade your beliefs, you'll upgrade your skills, you'll upgrade your knowledge, and you'll absolutely change the disempowering, destructive habits you have right now. And you will become the type of man capable of achieving the goals. And he goes, by the way, every one of those goals is totally achievable. And I know because I've achieved way more than that in way less time. So he leans over and he puts me on the spot. He goes, so are you interested or are you committed? I'm like, holy shit, this guy's putting me on the spot. And I'm feeling a little bit nervous. And I don't know why, Max. I just went, I'm committed. And he leans over, reaches his hand out to mine. He says, great. In that case, I will be your mentor. I go, wow, what's a mentor? It's a true story. I had no idea. And he explained to me, he says, a mentor is somebody who has walked the path that you want to walk. A mentor is somebody who will save you the time and energy and sometimes money of what not to do. And a mentor will also share with you what to do and why and how. I said, awesome. Well, I'm in. And he goes, great. And I was living in Montreal at the time, living with my parents. I said, great, I need you to move to Toronto. And the first words out of my mouth, move to Toronto, other than you that I just met now, my brother, who's a tennis pro, I don't know anybody in Toronto. He said, you don't need to know anybody in Toronto. You just need to make a decision. It says winners make decisions. Losers make excuses. Holy fuck, here we go again. So I said, but I don't have a job. He says, well, I'll give you a job working here, but you have to move here so I can mentor you. So I kept going with excuses. And he said, stop, look at the excuses you're already telling me. You just told me you're committed. He said, when you're committed, you do whatever it takes. When you're interested, you come with excuses. I said, fine, I'll move to Toronto. He says, good. He said, on May 15th, there's a real estate course. I need you in that course. It's 5 weeks, 9 to 5 every day. And when you pass the course, I will give you a job. I said, you want me to go to school? I failed English and math. Doesn't real estate have a lot to do with law and legal stuff? Some. I said, I'm not good at school. They kicked me out. He said, stop. There you go again. And this happened for probably about 10, 12 minutes. And I said, fine, I'll go to school. He says, great. You need $500. I said, $500. I have $40 in the bank. He says, great. Winners make decisions and they figure out how they can because they must. I'm like, fuck, this guy's just dropping these knowledge bombs with me. And my brother said, well, I can lend you $100. Maybe mom and dad could lend you some money. Maybe our sister could lend you some money. So Max, in a short story, 2 weeks later, I moved to Toronto. 10 days later, I moved to Toronto, quit my job, moved to Toronto, enrolled in the real estate school. And on June 20th, 1980, I got my real estate license and he gave me a job working on commission only. And over the next 18 months, I made $151,000.
Wow.
That's kind of like the short version of interested versus committed. And then being taught what to do by somebody who's already done it.
I love that. You shared a limiting belief that you had, that you weren't good in school, right? Yeah. And I think I actually, neither was I. I wasn't very good in school, but we tend to create these narratives, which I'm sure, I'd love to have you speak to. But we create these narratives and then most of us take those narratives with us to the grave.
That's right.
But the reality is, and I've, learned this over the past couple of years, that it's not that I wasn't a good learner or that I wasn't good, that I didn't have the potential to be good in any school. I just wasn't good in the schooling environment that I was put into for myriad reasons when I was a kid. But that doesn't mean that I wouldn't have excelled if I went to music school or if I went to medical school or if I went to,
or the school of life right out there. Right?
There you go. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well said. You don't even have to go. I mean, school is just a construct, right? That's
exactly right. Well, what's interesting, and I love where this is going, because when I moved from Israel to Montreal, I didn't speak English or French. I spoke only Hebrew at 5 years old. And so I got 2 years behind on just the language. So I didn't do well from grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I got into like grade 6, 7, 8, I actually started doing really well in chemistry and biology. Didn't do well in math or English, but chemistry and biology, I did well. And I was fascinated with chemistry and biology. By that time, I actually, could speak and I understood. And I spoke Hebrew, French, and English now. And it wasn't until the latter years, like getting to like 19 years old, 20, 21, that I realized I'm really fascinated with this belief structure, these habit structure. And one of my first events that I ever went to, and this was like 1980, 81, the instructor asked, how much do you know about your own brain and your mind? I didn't know anything, zero. I know I've got a brain. I don't even know what is mind. And he says, Do you think that the beliefs you have drive your behavior? And everybody put their hand up and said, of course. And then he said, well, what are beliefs? Like, what are they in the brain? Were you born with any beliefs? No. Were you born with a self-image of whether you're good enough, smart enough, worthy enough or not, whether you're self-confident or not? Were you born with any fears of failing or success, or fears of being embarrassed or shamed or ridiculed and judged? That's my guess not. Were you born with any habits? No. And he said, well, then obviously something happened in your life and in your environment to create these beliefs. He said, now, did you ever believe in Santa Claus? And everybody put their hand up, like we believed in Santa Claus, more or less, and the tooth fairy, more or less. He said, well, that wasn't true, was it? And you were able to let that go. Well, why not understand that beliefs and habits and self-image and self-confidence are nothing more than reinforced neural patterns in our brain? And if you don't like the beliefs or they don't serve you, you don't like the habits and they are destructive or don't serve you, why not get rid of them and create constructive, empowering ones instead of destructive, disempowering ones? And like, wow, I could do that. And he said, yeah. And so how the fuck do you do that? Because I want those. That was the beginning of me being fascinated with neuroscience and neuropsychology. And it's been a 41-year journey of behavioral neuroscience and behavioral psychology research, but more importantly, application. Right? How do I apply what we're learning about the most powerful bioorganism in the whole universe? We all own them. It's worth $100 billion, but nobody ever gave us the user's manual. We're just poor operators, but we can become better operators. Like we can become better at checkers. We can become better at chess. We can become better at tennis or basketball or knitting if we learn what to do and then we practice. Right. And so my journey started with having some really, really smart mentors who were able to create frames for me, a way to look, at me, right? But also a way to see the world of possibilities and probabilities. And what I believe today, the 2022 timeframe, right? We're right there is 107 billion humans have walked on Earth. You want to get healthier? We know what you should eat. We know about hormones. We know about exercise. We know about sleep. We know what you should do. That's not the problem. You want to make more money? We know how to make more money. You want to build a business? You want to write a book? You want to start coaching? You want to start a podcast? We know how to do that. That's not the problem. The problem isn't that we don't know how to. Maybe some people don't know how to, but that is the least of the problem today. The majority of the problem is something much deeper than that. And that's the arena I love to play in, because there's really only 4 things that hold us back. And I'm sure we'll talk about that and we'll have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I want to hear about the 4 things that hold us back. But it's funny when you were talking before about where beliefs come from, my mind goes to odd places sometimes, but it made me think of like implants. Like they're just literally just mental implants, like fake boobs, right? But I know many women now, actually. I've had, one of my close friends, Sarah Ann Stewart, has been on the podcast, and she talked about how she had these boobs put in, but once they ceased to serve her, and she realized that she was having all these unexplained health symptoms, which she traced back to having these foreign objects in her body, she got them out. She got a breast explant, which sounds kind of like a non sequitur, but it's not. So it should be that easy, is my point, is if you harbor beliefs that have been implanted into your brain that are no longer serving you, explant that shit, baby.
Yeah, I agree. The challenge is most people don't have a process by which to do it. It's a skill set issue, not a desire issue. right? And so with breast implants or explants, you put them in, you take them out. When we're dealing with a neural network, right, a brain, if you think about our human brain for just a moment, we know that we have about 100 billion brain cells. So I like to give people a visual. Think about you have 100 billion small marbles in your head. And these marbles, okay, when you hear stuff or you see stuff or you feel stuff, create connections, almost like the end of the branches of a tree. They start to formulate these connections where it's called DSPs, dendrite spiny protuberances, these little tentacles that connect. And every time we hear something, every time we experience something, anytime we reinforce a thought or emotion or behavior or result, these connections become stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And they go from a conscious, maybe 1 or 2 time or 5 time event that's a conscious effort into a subconscious pattern that requires almost no energy for our brain to activate. So if we were to think about this as a belief pattern is nothing more than a reinforced neural network, the question then becomes, can I atrophy or deactivate this belief system that may have served me in the past? Maybe it hasn't. And is it possible for me to deliberately, consciously create a new belief that is much more powerful? No differently than a software programmer can go in and program a software code, and then the software code runs until they change the software or upgrades the software. It just does what it's supposed to do. Well, what if we just thought, maybe my brain operates a little bit like that, and maybe it's time for me to upgrade my software around my beliefs, my identity, my self-image, my self-confidence, my self-worth. And is it possible to do that? Well, of course, because there's something called neuroplasticity, which says that we can actually rewire the brain. We can actually rewire our own brain. And no differently than if you exercise, you can strengthen your muscles. My latest New York Times, or my latest best-selling book, not New York Times best, it's called Innercise. We can innercise to strengthen our core neuromuscles. And now we're getting into the domain of deliberate conscious evolution, right? Where I am deliberately and consciously evolving myself, and I am now using my brain as a tool of mass construction instead of a tool of mass destruction, because it's so freaking powerful. But a lot of us got these wrong ideas and wrong beliefs when we were kids, or we stood up in a class and gave a wrong answer, and our friends, embarrassed us by joking around and laughing at us. So we uh-oh, maybe I shouldn't speak up, because there are mechanisms, circuits in our brain that avoid pain, avoid discomfort, avoid being embarrassed, avoid being ashamed, avoid being rejected in a billionth of a second. And if we don't have the awareness of the circuits that have been triggered and then what to do about it, that's like not knowing what to do if somebody walks in front of your car and you don't know how to steer to the left or to the right. And so now we're talking about being able to control our brain better and to strengthen the beliefs and the habits and the self-image so that it matches what we want to achieve versus us recreating patterns are more of the same.
I love that. I mean, just think about how limitless the human brain, your brain, listener, person listening to this right now, your brain is as limitless as the freaking universe. And yet so many of us, we get caught in these ruts, right?
Yeah.
We ruminate, hold on to limiting beliefs. Yeah. We don't create an environment by which we can form habits that are going to be productive for us and lead to our success. So talk to me about Innercise and some of the things that we can be doing every day, me included. I mean, I'm not perfect. I get stuck in ruts. I tend to, take the comfort, the safe route at times, not necessarily with my work, but personally, I go for what's comfortable, what's safe. I eat at the same restaurants all the time. Yeah.
It's not just you. There's a reason why there's a hierarchy of how our brain actually makes decisions, without us even knowing it. So the number one priority of our brain is for safety. right? So life, safety. Okay, I get that. Number two is all around glucose regulation and energy regulation. And why is number two so important? Well, because if we have to fight, saber-toothed tiger, so to speak, then we have to have the energy in our muscles to be able to fight or to run away. So our brain is managing glucose. And anytime we want to shift, let's say a behavior, or shift from, let's say, making $5,000 a month to 10, or 10 to 50, or 50 to 100, our brain says, oh my God, that's going to require energy. And the natural automatic propensity is not to do that. So we actually have to override a biological system that's been evolving for a couple of million years. So number one is safety. Number two is energy conservation or regulation of glucose. Number three is avoidance of any pain or discomfort. Now, if you were to remove my hair, my skin, and even my skull, what would you be left with? You'd be left with this brain, this 3-pound blob that's getting, light coming in through the eyes, which are part of the brain, sound coming in through the ears, attached to this nervous system with a sympathetic and parasympathetic, side to it. And any time that we alter behavior, this sympathetic nervous system, the fight, flight, freeze system, activates as a precautionary measure. And if there's any chance that you might fail, you might be embarrassed, ashamed, ridiculed, judged, you might waste time, you might waste money, you might lose, your brain just puts on the brakes of motivation and behavior. These are just circuits that go on or off in the brain. There's nothing wrong with you. The system is freaking perfect. But most people don't understand how these systems work. You get in your car, put on the ignition, fires up a spark plug, engine turns on, put into drive, hit the gas, you go. You want to slow down, put on the brake. You learned how to do that, but you didn't know how to do that to begin with. Well, what if I told you that before you can even think about whether there's a chance of you failing, your brain has already accessed the database of any information that's in it from your 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of being alive. And it says, oh my God, I read about something 3 years ago, that's in my biocomputer that a person who tried what I'm about to do failed and they lost a bunch of money, or they went on this diet only to gain all the weight back and then some. This is happening in billions of seconds in the most powerful biocomputer in the whole universe. So we set these goals, we get excited, we release dopamine, the reward, neurochemical in our brain, we get all excited. But then right next to that, our brain's going, but the last time you did this, you lost the weight. You gained it back. The last time you got in shape, okay, you let it all go. So all that effort was for nothing. So there are certain circuits and triggers that cause us to behave consistently with our comfort zone, homeostasis, right? And so unless we understand what's happening and then how to override the brain's natural propensity to conserve energy, keep us away from killing ourselves, avoiding pain, then we are going to keep repeating patterns and stay in our comfort zone. This is why lottery winners, lose all the money within 3 years, because their external world doesn't match their internal map of reality. This is why people who lose money gain it all back. It's so fascinating when you understand that there's three main networks in the brain, and there's multiple circuits that turn on or off. It's like you're driving your car and a light goes on. Like you've never thought about taking a hammer and hitting the light. The light's just telling you, hey, your back left tire is low on air. Okay, great. Back left tire is low on air. Let me go look at it. I'm down on windshield wiper fluid. There's all of these signals that we have learned how to navigate in our external world. Red light, stop. Stop sign, stop. Green light, go. But what about our own messages, our own emotions, our own gut, that is so intelligent? We haven't learned how to pay attention, to be aware of what's happening within us. So that means we are reinforcing patterns, and whether they're constructive or destructive, positive or negative, good or bad, our brain doesn't give a shit. It's just doing what it does. It's a bioorganism. okay, that we can actually teach and train. So, for example, you asked me a question, how do I start to Innercise? Last year, I wanted to get into the best shape of my life. I was 59, good shape, but I wanted to get into the best shape of my life. And I knew that my behavior to get into the best shape of my life would have to change. I'd probably have to work out even more. I'd probably have to tighten my diet. I've been a vegan for 8.5 years. I haven't drank alcohol in 12 years, but I was a sugar addict. And so that I knew that I couldn't get into the best shape of my life as a sugar addict. So I created a document of what my life would be like, okay, with a 6-pack at 60. And I'll show you something on hopefully my background. You'll be able to see. So what I started off with is this is my Exceptional Life blueprint that has my entire life in here. I don't know if you can see that right there.
Wow. Yeah. Space shuttle.
This has got about 40, 50 pages in here, but specifically
for you guys who are just listening, you could see what John's holding up on, if you go to youtube.com/Max Lugavere. Cause a lot of people just listen to the audio, but this is, so wait, but before that's incredible.
Yeah. Every area of my life, health, wealth, relationships, career, business, finance, charity, contribution is in this Exceptional Life blueprint.
That's insane. And for how many years have you been like coalescing the contents of that, collecting the contents of that book?
40.
Wow. That's insane.
Every year I tweak it and adjust it. And I teach it to all my students. But I want to show you something. This was the version for this particular year. And I found a couple of pictures, let me see if you can,
hold it up to your chest. Yeah.
There you go.
Just like that. Yeah. And maybe push it out forward a little bit. Push it out forward a little bit. Yeah. There you go. Damn, you are jacked. So wait, when did you take that?
That's not me. That's a picture that I cut out of a magazine. I cut out 2 pictures, then I cut out another one.
You wanted to look like that. Got it.
I want it to look like that by the end of the year. So there were 2 pictures that I cut out. I'll show you another one. But I'll tell you what I did with it to Innercise. So there's this one guy over here as well.
Wow, he's in great shape.
Great shape. This guy's in his 70s. The other guy's probably in his 70s. And I asked myself, what would I need to believe in order to be able to have a 6-pack at 60? What would my habits need to be like? What would be the identity that I would have to have in order to get myself into the best shape of my adult life for my 60th birthday? And I was in good shape. I was fairly healthy, but I had to really tighten up on my exercise. I had to tighten up on my sleep. I had to tighten up on my sugar habits. But I got myself into this routine of every day I would look at the image. Every day I would read my new script, my new health story. And last week, this was the picture that I took.
You've got abs. You've got better abs there than I have.
I've never had a 6-pack at 16, 26, 36, 46, or 56. But the point I want to make is I started to daily Innercise a new self-image by seeing the picture and then closing my eyes and visualizing myself with that body. I wrote a story that was different than my story. I said, I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that I now have a 6-pack. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I have released my habit of eating sugar every single day, refined sugar every day. Then I wrote out this whole new story that at the time, Max, was not true. But every day I read it, I visualized it, I emotionalized it, and I recorded it to listen to it every single day right after my morning meditation.
Wow.
Now, the question is, why did it work? And the answer is, whenever you take anything, whether it's auditory or visual, written, etc., repetition, creates permanent patterns. So I was overriding my self-image visual pattern. I was overriding my habitual pattern. And yes, I had to go to the gym. Yes, I had to sleep right. I had to create a plan for what I needed to do. But then I had to also sustain it long enough to override all of the neural patterns of my old self-image physically, of my old beliefs around, sugar, of my addictions, et cetera, to sugar. And 12 months of discipline, 12 months of innercising, 12 months of behaving how I needed to behave, not without its ups and downs. In June, I tore my meniscus. I wasn't able to do the cardio I needed to do. Anyway, so there were challenges along the way, and it wasn't just one, fell swoop of, from fat at 50 to six pack at 60, but it was through the retraining my brain, my beliefs, my habits, my self-image, and my identity every single day a little bit, 7 to 10 minutes a day. I was able to repattern my neural network so that it started to alter my behavior. Right? So when we take a look at any result, I don't care if you want to take a look at your physique, you take a look at your bank account, take a look at your relationship, take a look at your business. It doesn't make a difference. Any result that we look at today is an effect. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, completely.
So if I focus on the effect, I'm wasting a lot of time and energy. But if I focus on the cause of the effect, I'm going to now enter the domain of beliefs. I'm going to enter the domain of habits. I'm going to enter the domain of managing emotions. I'm going to enter the domain of the knowledge and skills that I need in order to alter the result. And I'm going to enter the domain of self-image, self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence. That's all inner game stuff. And most people are not investing enough time on the inner game stuff that causes the behaviors, that causes the results.
So putting pen to paper, with all of this, what are how do you get started? Is it through journaling? Is it through, you were in The Secret, right? Is it through writing down as clearly as possible your goals? Like, where do people begin with all this?
We always start with the end game in mind, right? So you're in Los Angeles right now, and I said to you, Max, I want you to get to New York. I want you to get specifically to Manhattan, New York. Let's go to the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, in New York. You go, great. I've got a destination of where I am or where I want to go from where I am. Then we say, okay, I have the vision of me being at the Plaza Hotel, and you and I are going to have some afternoon tea. Now I've got a vision of meeting you in New York at the Plaza Hotel for afternoon tea. Then we say, okay, whatever date it is today, I can walk there. I can take a bike there. I can take a plane there. Okay, I can take a car there. So now I can choose, how am I going to get there? And now I can start to say, okay, based on my vehicle, I can say, okay, by such and such a date, I should be here. Or such and such an hour, I should be here, then I should be there. So now we have a vision that's clear. Now we set some goals. Now we set some strategies for how am I going to do it? And now we get what I call my little Assaraf in gear, and I start taking action. Now, adjacent to that, if we want to go deeper than that, we go, okay, what would I need to believe in order to really do all this stuff? Well, I need to believe that I can do it. I need to believe that I deserve it. I need to believe that it's going to be a lot of freaking fun. I need to believe that there's probably going to be some challenging times, maybe some detours, but I'm still going to stay the course. Then I go, okay, what else do I need to believe? And I'll write down a whole set of beliefs of what is it that I need to believe in order to make that vision and these goals freaking impossible not to achieve. Part one. Part two, what would my behaviors need to be? Well, I would need to pack. I would need to do this, and this. Or you say, I don't know. Then I go, okay, well, who knows? Who knows how to get from LA to New York? right? Well, I'm going to Google it, right? Just freaking Google shit today. You can get more answers than you ever thought possible. Okay, so now I know how. And then I'm going to ask myself the final question. Am I interested or am I committed to getting to that destination and having that amazing time? Because if you're interested, you're going to do what's convenient. And if you're committed, you'll do whatever the fuck it takes and you will get your ass in gear and do it. So before you set any goals, whether it's for money, business goals, your podcast, your book, your coaching, whatever it is, all the how-to already exists. You may not know how, I get it, but the how-to exists. And the only way you're going to learn how to and follow through is if you're committed. So stop setting goals that you're not committed to. Stop setting goals that, yeah, that would be really nice. Oh, that would be fun. High five, kumbaya together. That's just airy fairy shit. In this world, on this blue planet, okay, behavior wins. And if it's the right behavior, right, at the right time, in the right order, there almost is no goal we cannot achieve. Almost. I know there's some stuff we can't achieve. I got it. But for most people, health, wealth, relationship, career, business, fun, and experiences, like, come on, we know how to achieve. You want to double your income in the next 12 months? I guarantee you can do it. And I'll prove a point to you. If I said to you, Max, take the most amount of money you have ever earned, and I want you to 5X that in your mind. Don't tell me the number, 5X in your mind. If I said to you, if you do not achieve that number that you just put in your mind, 5X, and everybody who's watching, do this with me, and I'll prove something to you in a nanosecond. I want you to imagine that 5X, and does it scare you a little bit like, I'd like to do it, but I don't know how to right now, or like that would take a lot of work. I have to change this. So imagine it's 5X. What if I shared with you this little scenario? Max, can you think of one person in your life that you, other than you love? It could be a parent, a brother, a sister, a best friend. It could be even a pet you've had that you would like kill for. Can you think of one person?
Definitely.
Who? Tell me who.
My cat. No, I'm just kidding. I have, off the top of my head, I thought of my friend, Craig Clemens, who's one of my closest friends.
Great. So imagine 12 months from today, if you don't achieve 5X, your best income year ever, to the minute, you will never see him again.
Oh, no.
You will never, ever see him again. No discussions, no conversation, just boom. You have no idea what's happened to Craig. Now, what would you do starting like right now? Which belief would you let go of, or limiting belief? Which strategy would you think about? Who would you call for help? What would you start doing right the F now for this week, next week, the week after, this month, next month, this quarter, next quarter, so that has an almost insanely low possibility of happening?
What would I do? I'd do whatever I had to do.
Right. So here's my question for you. If you really wanted to make 5X, right, start doing that stuff now, because the 5X isn't the problem. You can do it. And if it's the same Craig Clemens that I think it is, he could actually help you probably 10X.
You're right. He probably could. He's a good friend to have. He's a good player to have on your team.
Yeah, super, super great guy. But you see my point? So if somebody says, I want to lose weight and get in the best shape of my life in the next 12 months, great, you can do that. Somebody says, you know what, my relationship is struggling right now. I really want to make it amazing. Great, you can do that. Somebody says, I want to start a business. I want to write a book. I want to become an outstanding coach. I want to travel the world. Whatever it is that you want to achieve, if you are committed, you will be resourceful even in the absence of resources. If you are committed, you will find a way. If you're interested, you will find an excuse. Right? And so let's stop living in this world of what I call the drug of choice, excusitis, when we can really achieve so much more. But we don't achieve more just because we want more. We achieve more when we back it up with the identity to match that destiny, with the beliefs and the habits. And does it take work? Yeah, change takes some freaking work. But once you learn the process of change, then you become an adaptationist. Then you become somebody capable of setting a goal and then following through to completion. So you're not a goal starter. You have the identity of a goal achiever and finisher. That's an identity. Right. And so what I love to share with people is if you're committed, the process is here. There's a way to train your brain. There's a way to find out what you should do, when you should do it, how you should do it. If you don't have resources, there's plenty of people that will help you that already have the resources, but it doesn't happen for people who are interested.
Yeah, 100%. I get hit up all the time on social media, people asking for me to mentor them. And I just don't have the bandwidth. Like I don't really have that. Yeah. My life set up in a way where I can facilitate all the people who ask. But I will tell you that my assistant, Sydney, who now basically runs operations for what I do here at The Genius Life with my podcast, my speaking, she came to work with me. She literally just slid into my DMs on Instagram, basically, just saying that she'd love to work with me at a time when I really needed the help. But she also made it really easy for me to say yes. She told me where she lived, which was in close proximity to where I live. She shared her background, her eagerness, that she was super excited about what it was that I was doing. So yeah, it is a testament to taking risks. Even if you think that person that you want to reach out to, he has so many followers, how's he possibly going to see what the message that I send him? That's rarely the case. So I love this advice. What about when it comes to setting healthy habits? I love the line that implies that a person, I think the line is, a man is what he repeatedly does. Mm-hmm. That excellence is not necessarily an act, but a pattern of actions. So do you have any tips for us in that regard?
Yeah, there's a lot of neuroscience on habits, and so we understand the mechanisms of habits, which are comprised of a trigger, a behavior, and a reward. We're not going to go down that path. One of the things that we do know is to break or create a habit. If you think about what is a habit is an automatic thought, emotional, behavioral sequence that is triggered by something internal or external that requires almost no energy for us to implement and execute on. Okay, so that's what it is in our brain. And here's what we also know is there's a place in the brain called the striatum. And so when we repeat a certain thought pattern, emotional pattern, or behavioral pattern that creates a result, our brain says, okay, since you've done this so many times, let me automate it and let me move it from this conscious effort part of your brain to this subconscious striatum part of your brain that's connected to a few other circuits. And so here's what we know. It takes between 66 days to 365 days to either start and reinforce a new pattern so that it overrides an old pattern. So the old belief, it takes 21 days to start a habit, is just wrong. It's from the 70s. In 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, all of my students, okay, and I've got a bunch of brain training programs for a variety of different things. All of my students must agree, A, you're committed, not interested. But the second commitment they have to make, give me 100 days. And why 100 days? Because if I can get you to retrain your brain and to take the action required for 100 days, I can help override the old habitual patterns. Now, here's the thing with habit. Initially, when you're starting, the habit is more important than the intensity, complexity, or duration. Let me repeat. The habit is more important than the intensity, duration, or complexity when you start. So if you want to start, let's say, an exercise habit, commit to 5 minutes a day. 5. You don't want 5, 3. Don't commit to changing your sleep and your diet and your exercise and say, I'm going to do it for an hour and a half a day. You won't. You may do it for an hour and a half, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and then you're going to start to rationalize. And what does that mean? It means that your subconscious mind is going to cause you to tell yourself rational lies. I've done it for 5 days. I could take a day off. I've eaten so well, I don't need to eat well today. And then you break the pattern. And so what if you just said, I am going to commit to whatever I'm going to commit to 100 days. I'm going to lower the amount of resistance that I have to overcome my old habits. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to focus on the habit instead of how long I do it. I'm going to focus on the habits. You want to, my friend BJ Fox says, you want to start flossing your teeth, floss one tooth in the morning, one tooth at night. You want to start exercising, get your running shoes out, put them near your bed, then put them on, then go for a walk for 5 minutes and build the habit first, then add time, intensity, etc. And so if we did that for 100 days, I guarantee you, your brain's going to start to drive you towards doing that pattern. That's why habits are so hard to break, because it doesn't require any conscious effort. It's all done by your subconscious mind, which is 97 to 98, 99% of our daily behavior. And so whenever we're dealing with how do I build a habit, you build a small habit first that's consistent, and then you layer on more intensity or complexity at first. When I started on my program, I just said, I'm going to exercise for 5 minutes a day, and I'm going to just eliminate sugar. Those are my only two things. 5 minutes a day. I'm in Montreal right now, visiting my sister for a family issue. And, I still go to the gym every day because I can't not go to the gym. Like I can't, not going to the gym feels awkward to me. Right. But I built the habit of a little bit every day so that I reduced my I don't feel like it muscle.
I love that. I have the same relationship with exercise, by the way. So I really appreciate that you just said that. It's odd for me to not get some kind of fitness baked into my day because for me, it's a lifestyle.
That's right. It's part of your identity too. It's your identity that fits into your lifestyle. And what happens is when you start to do anything every day, even a little bit, it becomes part of who I am.
Yeah, that is, it's literally, it defines you. It's like, you almost want to put it in your Instagram profile bio. You want it to be that core to who you are. I'm not saying you need to put it in your Instagram bio, but and these tactics can be applied not just to fitness, but for anybody listening whose life dream has been to write a book. It could be sitting down at the computer and writing just a few sentences here and there, or launching the podcast that you've always wanted to launch. You just have to be, I suppose, highly incentivized to want to do it, right?
Committed.
Yeah, committed.
I'm just going to keep coming back to that, right? I wrote my first book. I failed English in grade 7, and I wrote my first book. It became a New York Times bestseller. That was, 20 years ago, Having It All. Wrote my second book, The Answer. It became a New York Times bestseller. Wrote my third book, The Vision Board Kit. It became a bestseller, not New York Times. Wrote my third book, Innercise, which I shared with you earlier, became an Amazon #1 bestseller. So I didn't think I was a good writer, but you know what I did? I just sat down and wrote. I wrote here are the things I want to talk about. And then I just started writing one paragraph, and then another paragraph, and another story, and another paragraph. Then I had an editor clean it up for me and got my work out into the world. Oh, wow, people actually like it. I was not supposed to write a book. I wasn't supposed to build some pretty decent companies. I wasn't supposed to get into great shape. At 49, I was 243 pounds, borderline diabetic, hypertensive, and had a fatty liver.
Wow.
At 60, I'm in the best shape of my entire life.
So great.
So the key is, we can allow our circumstances, to control us. I get that. And it's easy. But if we choose to live a life that we're proud of, a masterpiece. I decided many years ago, I want a masterpiece of my life. I don't have to make the most amount. I don't have to, for me, it's just for me, what would make my life a masterpiece? And I designed that first. And then I started to build the foundational pieces of the beliefs, the perspectives, the paradigms, the habits, the behaviors. And then just a little bit each day. I'm not the smartest guy on the block. I'm not the dumbest. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the slowest. But I do have some extraordinary habits. And when people tell me, you have a lot of discipline, I say every human being is 100% disciplined already to their current habits. Right? So what if I just understood that some of my habits are constructive and move me towards my goals, and some of them were not? How do I let go of drinking too much alcohol? How do I let go of not exercising? How do I let go of not sleeping well every night? How do I let go of eating too much sugar? Oh, okay. So now I start to ask, how can I let it go? And how can I create powerful habits? Like in business, I've always done well. Like I did well in business from 19 to 60, and I've built a few pretty successful companies. So that area of my life was great, but a few other areas, didn't do well. I was divorced twice. Now I've been with my wife, Maria, for 21 years, married for 16. I've got 2 amazing sons. So I had to use the same principles and the same building blocks I used in business, in relationships, in health, in all these other areas of my life. And then I was able to understand the neuromechanics of change and of habits and of beliefs. And then I get to teach it now so that other people can have maybe a little bit of light shined on their path and make their life a little bit easier to live.
Is there a social aspect to any of this? Because I feel like very easy as a single guy, unencumbered by family. I don't have any children. I don't even have a dog. I have a cat. That's how non-committal I have been in my life. But what about for people who are listening who they're in serious relationships? They can't just get up and go from their current domicile. They maybe have a few kids, a dog, obligations to who knows what. And they're hearing us and they're thinking to themselves that this is like all a pipe dream, that they're stuck in their rut, that they have friend groups who look at them a certain way and refuse. Cause I know that this happens. We're very lucky. We mentioned the great Craig Clemens, who's been on my podcast a number of times. He's a dear friend of mine, Sarah and Stuart. Like I'm surrounded by people that are very dynamic themselves and in terms of the way that they think about me. So I could one day to the next create a different identity for myself. And for the most part, they would probably be like, oh, Max is a creative guy. Why not? But I feel like that's not necessarily common or the norm in other social groups where friends kind of look at you a certain way and then they make fun of you if you draw outside the lines of their perceptions of how you are supposed to be. Is any of this ringing true? And if so, can you speak to it?
Sure. So it's not our circumstances that control our lives. It's our choices, right? And it's also what we allow, right? What we accept, right? But that's also driven by our identity and what we expect, right? So listen, I've been fortunate to have, hundreds of thousands of students who are or have been in my programs. I've been fortunate to have positively impact, I believe, the lives of millions through my work. And I can tell you stories like Joni Sanderson at 66 in a small town near Perth, Australia, never made more than $12,000 a year, raising 6 children on a widow's pension, starts to think differently about herself. And in her first year, makes $72,000 and then teaches how to train brains for senior citizens. I can share with you Kat Rama Brooks, a wedding planner on the island of Kauai in her early 80s. Wow. Her business is about bankrupt, zero money. Her husband's dying of cancer. Her life is a mess. Starts to reframe, recalibrate what she believes is true, sets a new vision for herself. And in the next 12 months, earns $247,500, takes $50,000 of that, takes her husband and herself on a 6-month trip to Thailand, pays $50,000 Okay, then he dies, but she wouldn't have been able to do that unless she changed her paradigm. I could take you to Carl Harvey in London, who was suicidal, about to commit suicide, watched my brainathon, started to retrain his brain. Carl Harvey now has 2 businesses doing millions of dollars a year. I can go on and on and on and on, whether you're a hairdresser, a homemaker, divorced, it makes no difference. What shapes your destiny are decisions, not circumstances. So if you want to say, I can't because, and you give me all the reasons, what most people don't understand, the very nature of this biocomputer, as soon as you or I say, I can't because, fill in the blank, our brain says, okay, let me show you how true that is. Now, what if we just shifted that a little bit? A little technique says, in the past, I used to believe or think or feel that I couldn't, and now I'm learning how I can. Your brain says, oh, great, open the possibilities to that. We can do that for limiting beliefs. We could do that for circumstances. If I gave you $100 billion computer, $100 billion computer that can access any information in the world, and come up with how you can achieve putting a Mars rover on that planet, okay, and bring it back to Earth, okay, what would you ask this biocomputer to do? Like, holy shit, if it could do that, right? Maybe it could do stuff like, help me have a great relationship. Maybe I can get healthier. Maybe I could just double my income in the next 12 months. Maybe I could save my business. Maybe. Well, you already own that biocomputer. And then you can use that biocomputer to access this thing called the internet. Okay. And you can find out just about anything you want right this second. First time, in the history of our species, right, in this internet era, that we have unlimited access to the books, the videos, the people, the tools, the resources, but we will not access them or use them when we start focusing, on why we can't. And we have this victim mentality, and we think we're a freaking oak tree that can't change.
Yeah, like our furniture. You're not furniture.
Yeah.
Our furniture doesn't change.
Yeah, if you don't like the results, the effects, why not get curious as to the cause? If you're single, but you'd love to be in a relationship and maybe married and have kids, then the question should be, well, what may be preventing me from being committal? And I'm just using something you just said in case that's there. If I have this business and it's struggling, okay, like what's causing me and it to struggle? Without judgment, blame, shame, guilt, or justification, just awareness. Because I don't care what business you're in. I don't care where you are in the world. There's somebody doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x. Well, why not you? Well, because I believe that he or she either has the knowledge, the skills, the contacts, the money, the tools, the resource, and I don't. That's a limiting belief. Well, what would have to happen to release that limiting belief and create a new empowering one that'll change your paradigm and change your behavior? Oh, I didn't think of that. Well, good. Let's start now. Let's use this biocomputer. You're not your brain no more than you are your hand or your finger or your heart or your lungs. You have a brain, but there's an observer and this intelligent, sentient thing within us, right, that can use their brain better. And I challenge everybody to go, wow, what if I could, change my beliefs? What if I could, feel like I am more than worthy enough instead of not smart enough or worthy enough or deserving enough? What if I could, without working harder, working differently, but achieving 2, 3, 4, 5x? Like, what if I could? What would that look like? Would I want that? If the answer is, well, sure, I'd want that, then let's go, well, how can I? Like, if I could, then how can I? And as soon as we get into using this biocomputer with better questions, right? Now we start to open up the world of possibilities. And since we live in, I also love quantum physics and quantum mechanics a little bit. And since we live in this participatory universe, since we are made up of 100 trillion cells called quanta, and these cells are vibrating packets of energy, and our level of thought oscillates 100 trillion of these cells. And in the world of quantum physics, there's this quantum field we live at. Is it possible that my focus is actually collapsing, okay, waves of possibilities, and my focus takes possibilities and collapse them from wave to particle of probabilities? Wow, that's a little deeper thought there of, am I participating in this intelligent, omnipotent universe? Well, fuck yeah. Wow, are you kidding me? Of course we are. That's why, you can walk into a room and not a word has been said, and you know that there's a problem, and you say, hey, what's going on? Your friends say, nothing. And you go, come on, the dog knows something is up. We're picking up these vibrations, okay, of emotions and thoughts with our intuitive faculty of mind. Well, can I practice that? Well, of course you can. But are you going to practice and start listening to it? If you have these goals and dreams and a vision of a better future, there is also a way for you to achieve that.
Wow. I mean, it's true.
Whether
you believe that you can or you can't,
it's
you're
true.
Right. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. And this is the domain, right, of using our higher cortical functions, right? Learning better questions, learning to give things meanings that empower us versus disempowering, learning to question, like, is this belief the truth? Like, is this Santa Claus again, a tooth fairy? Because I let go of that. Well, maybe I can let go. I'm not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. Maybe I can let go if I don't have the money, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the skill, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too white, too black, too Asian, Caucasian. Maybe I can let that go. And in letting that go, maybe I can make the possibility of a better future, health, wealth, relationships, career, business, finances, charity, fun, and experiences. And I can live an extraordinary life that I'm so freaking proud of. And I'm so vibrant that I just want to share it with others, so that they can see, hey, you can do this too. You can go from being a caterpillar to a butterfly. Here's how.
I love that, man. I have goosebumps. So I'm so inspired. I'm gonna 5x my revenue. Right. I don't know. Yeah, I'm actually. It's interesting because for me, I really don't think about money, but I'm really grateful that I get to do this for a living. Like to me, it's the greatest thing in the world that I was able to somehow, for myself, architect a life where I get paid to do what it is that I love.
Yeah, that's right.
And that it all sort of financially works out. But if I had additional resources, financial resources, there would be so much more that I could do on top of what it is that I'm doing. So it is an interesting way to think about money that, maybe if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I wouldn't have really thought this way, but I see money now as being a form of energy that allows you to do. Yeah, it's a tool.
It's a tool. Money doesn't say anything. And money just says, here's how well I'm playing this game of commerce or business.
Yeah.
It doesn't say what a beautiful, kind heart, giving, loving person you are. No, it just says, here's my score for playing the game of business. And this tool, if we go back in time enough, when tribes were living in small communities, there wasn't any exchange of money. You'd have the hunters would go out and get the game or the fish, and somebody go pick berries, and they came back to the campfire and they cooked stuff and they all ate. And then this tribe, married off their sons and daughters, and they set up a camp, maybe 3-4 kilometers away. And this tribe became really good at fishing, and this tribe became really good at hunting. This tribe became really good at growing, stuff. And then this tribe says, well, I'll trade you some of my seeds and nuts and berries for some fish. And this tribe that had the fish traded with this tribe to do some of this. And so we created this a system of bartering, and we traded coins and seashells and as a means of bartering and exchange. And when people started to move further away, we had actually chocolate, okay, with stamps on it. And then we had coins. And then when the coins became too heavy to travel between, one city and another, we moved to paper bills. And when that became too heavy, we moved to electronic means as a means of exchange. So money has never supposed to be a value of a person. Money was meant as a means of exchange. Now, some people said, hey, when I have a lot of money, I can have more power, more control, more peace of mind. I can have more impact for the good or for evil. I get that. But money has never been anything more than a tool. So the question then becomes, first, I'm going to take care of my needs and my family's needs. Got it. Then, if I can take my knowledge, my skill, my message, my product, my service, and I can help more people, if money is a means of exchange and I can help you with my X, and you just give me that green paper with ink on it that you Venmo me, there's fair exchange. And the marketplace determines how much this pen is worth, how much this water is worth, how much these reading glasses are worth. The market determines that. So if I can get good at giving people options to get this pen or these glasses, then they're going to give me that green paper with ink on it that they traded somebody for the work that they do. So the only purpose of money is I want to do more of what it is that I want to do more of. And so I don't eat any differently anymore.
Yeah.
I don't eat any differently anymore. I don't fly differently. I don't travel any differently anymore. But I am able to impact many, many, many more people through the charitable contributions, through the stuff that I'm able to do, because I don't have to worry about money anymore. Right. So when we talk about money, first, of course, I get it. It's for safety and security. I get that, but then once you have everything you need, then it's about impact. And I want to have a lot of impact. Some people do, some people don't. That's okay. You make more money, you make the amount of money that you feel you want to make to fulfill your life's purpose, vision, and mission. Nobody else's. And what may be great for you may not be great for me. I've got two sons I mentioned earlier. I've got one son that wants to be a millionaire by the time he's 30. He's 26 now, right? I've got another son that doesn't care whether he's a millionaire and whether I, give him money in his trust account or not. He doesn't care. They're great. All I want him is to trade his life for what he loves and something that he feels proud of, so that whenever, life is over, he can go, yeah, what a freaking great journey. Thanks, Pops. Thanks, Mom. I had a great time. I traded my life for what I loved, for my truth. So not everybody's supposed to make a lot of money. Not everybody's supposed to build, big companies. You're supposed to do what's in your heart that fulfills you, so that you could say, my life is a masterpiece.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed that conversation, you're going to love this one.
I struggle with being decisive sometimes. I get analysis paralysis.
Right.
And, in my relationships, like past intimate relationships, I'm just not decisive. I never make the decision to take the trip because I'm pretty comfortable where I am. And that always has led in the past to conflict with me, even when it comes to picking a restaurant and being decisive. Any tips for that?
Yeah, well, vision drives decision. So when you're being indecisive, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're afraid of a negative outcome. You're envisioning a negative outcome. It's and that our natural default mode is to do that. So a little bit of it is changing the theater in your mind, or thinking about how much you're going to lose by inaction. Dan Sullivan runs an outfit called Strategic Coach, and both my son Brandon and I are in Strategic Coach. And it's a great thing for entrepreneurs. Because, everybody needs coaching. Heck, Tiger Woods has a coach. If Tiger Woods can have a coach, I can have a coach. And all the top executives I know, whether they be corporate executives or entrepreneurial executives, the frequency of coaches among top players is really, really high. So anyway, a lot of us entrepreneurs go to Sullivan, top tier people, and he has something called the gap in the gain. And you're either in gap thinking or you're in gain thinking. And so, we had an employee in my company that I was a couple of years ago that we had to let go. And we were very frustrated with his lack of output. But what we assigned him to, we quadrupled that business that year. And I kept getting frustrated by how we weren't getting where we wanted to go, which is gap thinking. And sometimes I forgot the fact that we quadrupled what we wanted. So this whole gap gain thinking, and your default mode is to be in the gap. What did I lose? What could I lose? What am I missing out on? That's our natural default wiring. So what do you do about it? You just address that it's there, and then take whatever small steps you need to overcome of it. Some of it is gratitude exercises, great mental health stuff, keeps you in the game. Some of it is, look, if you're in the US, and this is going to sound condescending, but if you're in the US, you're ahead of 95% of the planet. There are people who literally have to worry about whether or not they're going to make it to the sunrise because they live in a dangerous place. We live in a blessed place. If you're in the US, you're playing with house money. So go for it. The universe, the powers that be, we're not here on the planet to be fearful. Go for it.
There's this great line from one of my absolute favorite movies of all time, Mr. Nobody. As long as you don't choose, everything remains possible. And that to me has been a plague, because I identify with that. I like to keep my options open, but sometimes it's been to the detriment of, business decisions that need to be made, difficult decisions in your personal life.
Wow, that's really interesting. And you can get something like that in your head, just 2 lines. And if it rattles around in your head, it'll hold you back. That's really interesting.
Yeah. But I think that being more decisive is definitely an important, and also when you're stepping into your sort of your masculine energy in a relationship, especially, there's all these memes on social media about how just counting the relationships that have ended because 2 people couldn't decide what to have for dinner.
Yeah, it's horrible, right? It's horrifying, and that's the truth. So yeah, step into it. I mean, a shot on goal is always a good shot. And I don't know if Wayne Gretzky said that. I attribute it to him all the time, but man, I like taking those shots and finding out.
So what are some areas in life where negotiation comes into play? Because this is your expertise. You're brilliant. You're so articulate, and you've got so much insight to offer. So, you mentioned negotiation. Often people are talking about like money, and when my head goes to like buying a car, for example.
Right.
But there are just so many examples of where negotiation plays an important role in getting what we want. Can you just sort of like explain that to our audience so that we really get the picture of why the tools that you have to offer are so valuable for everybody?
Yeah, well, it's anytime you want something, and it's about great collaboration. You want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go as a team. You want to go far in life, you got to pull a team together. You have to negotiate collaboration with each other. You got to negotiate collaboration in all your relationships. Your goal should be long-term relationships, which makes negotiation an acceptable strategy in all relationships. You're not trying to hurt somebody. You're trying to have a great long-term relationship. So, and practice on the little stuff. Like you walk into a restaurant, you want a good seat. You're entitled to a good seat in a restaurant. If they walk you past the table because it's your first time in a restaurant that you want to sit at, and then walking you to the back of the room, but negotiate to not be a jerk, because the people that sit you down, let's say you get that table, you don't want it to be a half an hour before the waiter shows up.
Right.
You don't want them putting your food at the back. So, how do you do that? Empathy is recognizing how the other side sees things, and then coming right out and say it. Like if I want a better table in a restaurant, when I ask for it, what's that person going to think? they're immediately going to think, look, look at this self-entitled person. He probably don't even tip well. This guy hasn't even sat down. He's already asking for stuff.
Mm.
And so what am I going to say to get that better table? I'm going to look at him and say, listen, I'm getting ready to ask you something that's going to make you seem like I'm entitled to something I don't deserve. And because that's what they're going to think. So I'm anticipating it. And they get this look on their face and I'm like, what? And I go like, I want to sit at that table over there. And they're like, oh, of course. And they walk me right over. And then they're happy to deal with me. That was a negotiation. No money involved. But I want people to be happy to deal with me, to want to continue to deal with me, because there's no such thing as a one-off. Even if you think it's the car thing, which is what you asked about. Everybody wants to know how to get a better price on a car, as if every negotiation was a car negotiation, which is a one-off. How do I really kick the salesman's ass and get a great price on a car, or the cabinets, or something like that? Well, look, if you got a great price on a car, you're going to want to come back. They're going to service the car. You're coming back to everybody. So look at all negotiations as, yes, you want more, and no, you do not want the person feeling bad about having given it to you, because you're going to want more tomorrow too. So I'm always looking for those opportunities, and they're everywhere. They're in Starbucks. They're everywhere.
In the example that you gave with the waiter, it sounded like what you were doing, just to deconstruct that a little bit, you were disarming the host.
Yeah. Yes.
To use a combat term.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy. And one of our strategies, when you learn the Black Swan method, we have something called the accusations audit. Now, there was a time when we actually referred to that as disarming empathy. We use that exact word because we don't want to be combative. So how do we disarm them? Some people refer to it as self-deprecating humor, another version of that. And that's actually the emotional intelligence behind self-deprecating humor is really high, because then what you're doing is you're disarming, you're using empathy, and you're doing it in a playful manner. And that's a great combination of stuff. So it is very disarming.
So talk to me about empathy. So it's really interesting that when you're trying to negotiate with somebody, we tend to think of it as this combative interaction, right? But actually You're saying, no, we got to be friends.
Yeah, or friendly.
Friendly.
There's a couple fine distinctions. Being friends, being friendly, being liked, being likable. Draw some real fine lines there. You got no control whether or not somebody likes you. You have complete control whether or not you're likable. Stuart Diamond, brilliant negotiation professor out of Wharton, wrote a book, negotiation, called Getting More. And Stuart's a sharp dude. I've never met him in person. I've been impressed by his material, his thought patterns. My son Brandon is a very big Stuart Diamond fan. But I did hear him speak one time, and this is the source of my data. I heard Stuart Diamond say, you're 6 times more likely to make a deal with somebody you like. Being likable increases your deal velocity. Being likable in a playful way, there's other data out there that indicates you're 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. Now you start to see how these things begin to link together to give you negotiation power, to give you the ability to make a better deal and have the other side want to deal with you again. So you start rolling these things together and you increase your deal velocity. Then you add in a couple of other characteristics and you make better deals and you make more deals is what you're after. And I went off on like 3 or 4 tangents there. I apologize.
No, but I definitely it makes complete sense. My brothers, again, going back to them, they work in the corporate world, so I get to hear all these anecdotes that I've never personally experienced. But one of them is a manager, actually, and he says that when he's looking to hire somebody, the sad reality is you're more inclined to want to hire somebody that you just want to hang out with and spend time with, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with that person.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's the reality of human interaction. So yeah, that's a great observation. Be likable. But don't allow yourself to being taken hostage by needing to be liked. I think that was one of the distinctions that I was trying to make as I was rambling. But if you need to be liked and you get a cutthroat on the other side, then all they got to do is, they're going to take you hostage by your need to be liked. And I can separate those two things. I can be very likable, I can smile, and I can say, I'm sorry, we can't make the deal. I like you personally, but the deal's just not going to work.
What are some other characteristics that make a good negotiator? You've talked about likability, empathy, smiling. Good example of nonverbal communication.
Yeah, and you know what? And let's get back to this empathy thing for a second too, because I want to clear some of this up. In today's vernacular, in today's conversation, empathy is agreement, empathy is compassion, empathy is sympathy. Empathy is something, I empathize with you, which almost means like I'm on your side. That is not empathy. Not empathy, not empathy. Empathy is being able to see it from the other side's perspective and then being able to articulate their perspective, which means, a Palestinian should be able to use empathy with an Israeli. I had to be trained to use empathy with a terrorist, with somebody from Al-Qaeda. And then it becomes extremely powerful, but we don't see it around us at all. Excuse me. You mentioned Clubhouse before, and Nicole Benham. I'm on do Clubhouse stuff with her a lot, and her room, the Beyond room, which is great interviews.
I love her. Shout out to Nicole Benham. She's a Clubhouse superstar.
Yeah, she really is,
and a good friend.
Yeah. Yep. Very good friend. So we're doing I think I was doing it with her one night where we're doing a thing with it's when Israel is spanking Hamas for good reason. And everybody was up in arms over it. And so we said, okay, let's get people to support the Palestinians up. Let's get people to support Israel up. Let's have a dialogue. And the only rule was to say, before I disagree with you, here's what I believe your perspective is. Now, you could argue all you want, but all you got to do is articulate their perspective before you tell them why it's wrong or before you disagree. Before I disagree, here's what I think your perspective is. And almost no one could execute that. People only wanted to be argumentative. Now, the interesting thing about that also is, too, nobody got mad. That was probably the only hosted discussion on the topic on Clubhouse that didn't degenerate into screaming matches, name calling. What's the point? Even the people that were completely pro-Palestinian, who wanted to do nothing but attack the people that were pro-Israel, the mere act of trying to articulate the other side's perspective calmed them down. They didn't leave the discussion feeling poisoned by the dialogue. And that's what these arguments do to you, which is what puts you in a downward spiral, because this anger and self-righteousness that tends to go with it really is a toxin that erodes who you are as a human being. So empathy, the real application of empathy, while it does a lot for the person you're applying it to, it does a lot for you too. It actually saves your soul and your spirit from the toxins that anger put in you. And I think it's really important to make that point, that really understanding the other side is medicinal for you.
Crucially important. And I mean, whether applied to geopolitical conflict or your relationship with your significant other, being able to understand their side. And you also said repeating it. So is repeating their side, would you say that that's one of the sort of primary tools of empathy to show that you're getting the other side's perspective?
Yeah, it's a great start. I mean, we in the Black Swan method, we get 9 skills, and basically one of them is paraphrasing. There's a couple different ways to repeat back to somebody. You can pick a couple of words, word for word, 1 to 3-ish words, which we refer to as a mirror. or you can repeat it back in your own words, which is paraphrasing. But it's really helpful for both sides to do that. And sometimes when you're struggling to figure out where somebody's coming from, just the mere act of repeating what they've said out loud kicks your own mental circuits into gear and generates in-depth understanding for both of you. So just repeating it is a great thing to do. It's a great skill.
Are there any tips? Because I feel like sometimes that might, if done the wrong way, can come off as sounding patronizing.
Great question. And what causes you to sound patronizing is tone of voice. I mean, one of the secret hidden skills that's out in the open is the magic of tone of voice. And yeah, we like to say in the Black Swan group, your inner voice betrays your outer voice. So if you're trying to paraphrase with them and you think that they're stupid, your inner voice is you're an idiot, and that's going to come out in your tone of voice. Or if you are genuinely curious, genuine curiosity is one of the great hacks. If you're genuinely curious, that's going to come out in your voice, and the other side is going to respond to the fact that you're actually curious and you're not accusatory. So tone of voice is the distinction, and so many people overlook it because it's so simple, but it's absolute magic.
You have the tone of your voice is very soothing. It's very, if I were negotiating anything with you, I would feel like just very calm. Like I would be just disarmed by your voice quality alone. Because I feel like when people enter these sorts of relationships, there's like a tendency to jump to fight or flight. But the tone of your voice is very, it puts me right into that sort of like, it's very calming.
Yeah, which then the next step from that is collaboration. You're not going to feel attacked. If you don't have to worry about me attacking you, you're going to be much more open to collaborating with me. So we come up, we can take negotiation from a zero-sum game to a positive-sum game. And that's where the real magic is.
Yeah. I've heard you say in previous interviews that asking the question why is something that doesn't always have the intended effect.
Right.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, unfortunately, like every human being on the planet, we've got it beat into us from about age 2 on that if somebody's asking us why, we did something wrong. When you're a little kid and you make a mistake, whatever your ethnicity, whatever your culture, little kids around the world break stuff or do stuff because they don't know any better. And the nearest adult, whether you're Palestinian or Israeli, the nearest adult is going to point at you and say, "Why did you do that?" And so we get it beat into our head over and over when somebody says why, that we're being accused of doing something wrong. Now, a lot of times, and there's a lot of business advice, which is find out their why. The philosophy, the strategy behind that is sound, which is find out what motivates them on a deeper level. What's their why? But the problem is, if you ask them why, they're going to be like, "Oh, why? You think that me wanting that is wrong." And, so just the word triggers a conditioned response, a battered response. We're battered by why. So just getting a lot of people that I know, they just ask what instead of why. Said, "Why do you do that?" To say, what makes you want that? Complete change in the way that lands, and you're getting at the same information. So why is one of those terms that words that's problematic depending upon which side of it you're on.
It makes people really defensive.
Absolutely. Every time. Unavoidable.
Wow. When is negotiating different when two people have sort of an aligned, a shared outcome that they desire? Like, for example, two people who are married, there's a conflict. They want to stay married. They don't want to end the relationship. They want to get along. But what about when two people have completely differing visions of their ideal outcome?
Yeah, and the interesting word there is vision, because vision drives decision, and a lot of people will have different visions and want it differently. The hard thing about that is, no matter how smart you are, it's impossible to know what the best outcome is. I mean, I could explain it on an intellectual level. It's an asymmetric world. Which means everybody has imperfect information, which means there's stuff you don't know. And you're always holding stuff back. You know, we've trained thousands of people. And when you're in black swan training, we'll say, how many negotiations were you in where you weren't holding information back, that you didn't have hidden information? And people thinking like, yeah, I'm always holding something back. Of course they have hidden information. So if you do, so do they. And you don't, if it's hidden, you don't know what it is, which means you can't possibly know what the best outcome is, which means you're going to have a different vision because you've got imperfect information. Now, the really hard thing to wrap your mind around is to add another layer of complexity onto that. Is like, what happens when the hidden information overlaps? Nobody has any idea what kind of cool stuff is in there. That's where we talk about black swans, the things that change everything, the nuggets that change everything. So most of the time, to get back to your original question, the people are going to have differing visions. You need to be a little Zen-like, you know, a little Tai Chi-like, you know, a little Buddhist in that letting go and go into it, being willing to discover what's going on. Now, that's easy to say, and it's hard to do because we're wired to have a goal. And to let go of that goal is really unsettling. But that's where the magic is. You got to let your own vision go.
Yeah. You've also, I've heard, offer another tactic. Say something wrong because the other side. Tell me about that. That's another counterintuitive. I never would have thought that would be
a sneaky move. Yeah.
But it's sneaky, but it works. Tell my audience about this trick.
Yeah, well, we'll refer to it as a mislabel. Label is a verbal observation, but what it is oftentimes is inviting correction, saying something intentionally wrong. It seems like that this deal just isn't going to work for you at all. Well, yeah, it's going to work for me if I get this. Boom, you just gave up some great information. People love to correct. Now, people hate to be corrected because when you get corrected, you're embarrassed unless you're smart enough to do it on purpose. You get accidentally corrected, you get embarrassed, and people see that humiliation. They feel humiliation. People would literally rather die than be embarrassed, than be humiliated. Like if you ask somebody, you want to stand up in the town square while all thousands of people laugh at you and ridicule you, which would you rather have? Ridicule, or can we just cut your head off and kill you right now? Most people go like, kill me now. Like, that's how bad embarrassment is. Yeah, I die of embarrassment. That's where that phrase comes from. But that's your perspective on it. The other side, what you felt embarrassed by was a correction. Correction is a helping thing. Like, when people correct you, two things happen. On some level, they absolutely believe they're helping you, which is taking them from adversary to collaborator. When somebody corrects you, they've just stepped to your side of the table. Now they feel in a superior position, but they've gone from combative enemy, adversary, to collaborator. You just gained. Now, the other cool thing about the fact that you just force them to come to your side of the table, they don't even know it, is people are ridiculously honest when they correct. You'll trigger some quick information and they will blurt out stuff that they should not tell you. There's a real estate deal student in a class we were teaching at Georgetown accidentally said something wrong about this commercial building that was available and assumed that the other side didn't know what they were doing. They said, sounds like you guys just don't believe in the market fundamentals. And they said, no, the owner's underwater on other buildings. And like, what? Like, there's no way that the real estate agent should ever have told the buyer that the seller had other commercial properties they were underwater on. That was like closely held. I mean, you're never going to, that's kind of weakness you're never going to give up.
Because that gives the buyers like complete leverage.
Yeah. And then, but it was a correcting move. And so the agent got to feel good correcting. And so it's like this, if you can wrap your mind around being corrected, you get stuff out of people that they will not tell anybody else.
So an intentional erroneous statement to get the other party to correct you can be a very useful tool to turn that person into a collaborator.
It turns them into a collaborator. It gets you proprietary information faster.
Wow.
And then the kicker of all of it is, there's a phrase, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. Well, since they felt great when they corrected you, correcting is satisfying, then it's also great for continued collaboration. They're never going to regret telling you something they shouldn't have told you. They're going to remember how they felt when they said it. That's the memory that they will retain. So it doesn't hurt your relationships. It increases them.
I love that. So useful. When it comes to, the title of your book, Never Split the Difference. When it comes to like number-based negotiations, something that I've always heard, you don't want to be the first. You don't want to offer the first number.
Right.
Something to that effect.
Right.
Why is that? And are there any other sort of really simple tricks that you could offer us for people that are, in sort of financial number-based negotiations?
Yeah, and that's one of the things in negotiation. It's a great debate, whether or not you throw a number first, because there are a lot of people out there that want to throw a high anchor first, and they have their reasons for that. But what they ignore is, naming high anchoring makes deals go away. The vast majority, which means not all, but the vast majority of the people that are really good negotiation practitioners, they want you going first because they look at that as information. And they love information. They also know that if they go first and they go too high and they drive you away from the table, then they lost a deal that they should have made. And I heard a businessman once say, I never lost money on a deal I didn't make. Yes, you did, because you wasted time. And you should have made money. And your real currency is time. You use time, you use money to buy you time. That's the currency. So yeah, driving deals away from the table is a bad idea. You don't make it costs you money. So that's why you don't want to name a number first. Also, you may come in low. That's why you don't want to name a number first. So what do you do instead? Yeah, this side's got a number. You coax it out of them. You something as simple as, sounds like you got a price in mind. Increases the chances that they'll throw a number. Does that work every time? No, it just works more often than say, what's your price? Like, what's your budget is the most horrible way to ask the other side the number, because everybody's been conditioned to not respond to that.
Oh, that's what I do. So what's the better alternative?
Sounds like you got a price in mind.
Sounds like you got a price in mind.
Or sounds like, and there's other versions of that. Sounds like you got a range in mind. You want to be gentle about it. Your tone of voice, you want to be curious. Sounds like you got a price in mind. That makes you feel like I'm leading you into something. But if I were to say, sounds like you got a price in mind, that feels curious. It feels, you feel safer in responding to that. Now, the great negotiators also are probably going to give you your price, because they know that once you get your price, you're going to be ridiculously flexible on terms. And that's where the real money is. So if you negotiate with a Black Swan group and you got a price, we're going to give you your price. We're not going to hammer you on the price. We want you to be happy with the deal. Your principal happiness is going to come from price. Everybody's wrapped up in price. But then we're going to start talking about terms, and we're going to figure out how we're going to tweak this deal to make it better for us and for you. But we know the real negotiation comes when you get into the terms, and I don't want you getting bent out of shape over feeling you got exploited over price.
I love that. Yeah, that whole thing about, asking your budget. For now on, it's all about the range. Sounds like you've got like a range in mind. I really like that. It's also a lot less, I don't know, it's a lot more friendly. It's like
Yes.
turning the other person into a collaborator. I'm starting to see the theme that you really want to make the other person, no matter who it is, feel like they're collaborating with you, as opposed to this sort of making a transaction with you.
1,000%. 1,000%. Every step of the way, every aspect of the design, regardless of how adversarial my counterpart is. And Jim Camp wrote a great book called Start with No back in 2002. He always talked about the person on the other side of the table as the adversary. That's the way Camp was wired. Great negotiation advice, but he saw everybody as an adversary. We don't even use that term. We use counterparts. If I'm training you in a black swan method, I'm going to change your terminology. We're going to change your terminology from adversary to counterpart because we want you wired for collaboration because you're going to make more money as a collaborator.
I love that. Money is important. It's energy.
Yes.
Definitely appreciate that. So, one of the core tenets, be friendly, make the person be likable. The person doesn't have to like you, but be likable.
Yeah.
Striking up conversation with people. I feel like these tools could be used to make friends. Yep. But when it comes to initiating, get girls' phone numbers. Yeah.
It's a relationship that you're hoping to be long term, right? Yeah, ideally.
There you go. 100%. Yeah. So can you talk to us about striking up conversation with people? Just something super simple like that, which I think is very foundational.
Yeah.
Chris Voss, how can I strike up conversation with anybody?
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna give you two phrases. Gather data with your eyes. Do a cold read, gather data with your eyes. What's a cold read? You look at somebody, you take a wild guess on what's going through their mind, what kind of day they're having. That's gathering data with your eyes. Somebody looks stressed, look at them, say, tough day. Make an actual observation of how you read their mood in the moment, and then throw it out there verbally. You will be probably the only person that actually looked at them that entire day and saw them as a human being. That's transformative and startling in a delightful way for them. Secondly, you have suddenly become different from any of the other hundreds of bozos that they've encountered that day that didn't pay attention to them all. It instantly causes you to stand out. Now, a lot of people just look at this as compliments, and it is compliments, but an observational compliment. It's an observation. I think Bill Clinton, was famous for this, and probably still is. But I remember reading about, you get a compliment from Bill Clinton in the first few moments of interacting with him, but it would be an accurate compliment. I mean, he'd notice something about you and comment on it, and he gathered data with his eyes. He made an observation. He did a cold read. He picked out something about you that he knew that you had taken the time or was a indicator of you. Now, it doesn't, and I'm sure that Clinton probably focused specifically on something you had on. But what you also have on is a look on your face. And now I can take it one step further, and I can take a look at your face, because the look on your face is probably a direct reflection of what's going through your mind. And so let me dial into you as a human being. So gather data with your eyes, do a cold read, and make an observation. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. Again, another one of our students at Georgetown who was learning the Black Swan method, she used to do this with cab drivers all the time. She said one time, she threw enough observations, because you get really good at this. It's, the TV show, The Mentalist. They just gather data with their eyes and they're making observations. She said the cab driver turned around and looked at her and said, "Do you know my wife?" But every time you do this, you get better at it too. And then, people feel seen. And you're the one that saw them. And it's this great upward spiral for doing that. So do a cold read, gather data with your eyes, throw the observation out.
Any tricks on how not to appear creepy? Is humor an essential part of that? Or, because I think a lot of people put pressure on themselves. We'll use the example that you gave of introducing yourself to a girl or a guy, member of the opposite sex, or same sex, whatever. Yeah. How do you, I think a lot of people try to be funny, come up with witty, they put a lot of pressure on themselves. Is that an important ingredient, or is it purely, about just observing and then making a simple observation to them?
That's a great question, and something I left out, but is continue to observe. Once you throw this observation out, you're going to get a response. You get creepy if you're not paying attention to how they respond. Like if you're determined that no matter what, you're going to continue to be funny, you're not paying attention to them. Let it be a dance, let them lead. And then it will be a great collaboration. As soon as you start ignoring their response, now you got a problem. Now you're creepy. So continue to gather data. I never heard anybody describe Bill Clinton as creepy. Now that we're discussing this, I realized that he had to have continued to stay dialed into the person that he was talking to and responding appropriately to how they responded. And there is story after story, because, when you're the president or politician, you're talking about micro interactions. You're talking to somebody, human beings, for maybe 15 seconds to 3 minutes at a time, and you were moving on. So it's not like these are long conversations. So, and I never saw him in action, but as we're talking about it now, I knew these were brief interactions. He had to continue to be gathering data with his eyes, and then responding appropriately as he moved forward.
What about finding common ground? Like sometimes I'll give an example. There's a supermarket that I like to go to that has it's a hot food bar, and I eat there a lot. And there's often interesting people around, sometimes attractive girls, sometimes just people that seem like they've got something cool to say. And without making an observation and putting the focus on them, you could comment about wow, there's a $20 bottle of water. How absurd is that? You can kind of, is that useful at all to make a meaningful connection with somebody?
Yeah, it can be. What we're really hoping for from common ground, and tactical empathy is a replacement for common ground, because what you want from common ground is some understanding. And that's really what we're looking for from common ground. If we have this, we share an understanding. If you like the same things that I like, or if you're from the same place I'm from, common ground I've seen triggers to the strongest instantaneous connection for geographical common ground or ethnic common ground. But what are we looking for? We're really looking for the other side to understand where we're coming from. Now, in those moments that we get this geographic or ethnic common ground, like I grew up in Iowa. Somebody says, "Hey, man, yeah, I'm from Iowa. It's this wonderful blue collar accepting place." But if you're from Iowa, we're going to initially hit it off. But what happens if I don't have common ground? Do I want to not be able to establish a relationship with that person? No, I don't want to cut myself out of 90% of the world. So if you realize that common ground is just a desire from the other side for you to know where they're coming from, Now you can up level that whole approach by just articulating. You could be, you could be from Mississippi. I'm from Iowa, or, I spent a lot of time in New York City. As soon as I begin to understand where you're coming from, then common ground falls away because you want to be understood. And that's why, raising a level of your game to empathy, which is just genuinely understanding where the other side's coming from, common ground, you don't need it anymore because empathy is so much better.
Agree. Wow. Mind blowing. You're obviously an incredibly well-spoken person. Are there any tools that you're familiar with for your students that can help people get better to develop greater verbal fluency? I think this is a big aspect of this, but you're somebody, for example, who's like very verbally, like you just, you wield language like a blade, like very, very surgically. You're very good with your language. But I think there are some people out there that are concerned that maybe they're not as good at speaking.
I look at making mistakes verbally and in my articulation as learning accelerators, opportunities to get smarter. That's in language fluency, whether it's just trying to get, more articulate in your own language or even learn another language. What holds you back is the fear of mistakes, because then you keep your mouth shut. And you begin to see mistakes as learning accelerators in so many different instances. Like, I think her name is Sarah Blakely, the woman who invented Spanx, Jesse Itzler's wife. Talk about a power couple, two phenomenally people. And I think I remember hearing that around her dinner table growing up, that her dad used to go like, "What mistakes did you make today?" They would celebrate their mistakes and they would look at them as accelerators. And in point of fact, they are accelerators. The director of business development for the Black Swan Group's a young lady named Davy Johnson. She goes on a mission to Ecuador. She didn't speak Spanish. But she's this positive, upbeat person. And the person that where she was supposed to learn Spanish from said, "Yeah, well, you're going to learn it. It's an immersive environment. In reality, it's going to take you 18 months to get to really good fluency. And the real reality is you're going to have to make 10,000 mistakes in the language to get to fluency." And David was like, "Oh, I'll make them sooner." And she looked at every mistake as a learning opportunity. She obtained that fluency in 8 weeks, not 18 months. So in any sort of verbal fluency or whatever you're in, be willing to make mistakes. The self-deprecating thing that you mentioned earlier. I'm from Iowa. I spent a lot of time in New York City. I got the most convoluted way of saying things of anybody you ever heard on the planet. But I get a kick out of butchering words or mispronouncing words, because then if I'm self-deprecating, it becomes something that we can laugh about together. So yeah, the verbal fluency is a lot of fun if you're willing to make fun of yourself.
Hey, if you like that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.
There's this theory called the Savannah theory of happiness. And it basically states that the fewer people you are, the fewer people that are where you are, the happier you'll tend to be as a function of population density. And this is probably because we evolved in pretty small groups of people, so max about 150 people. And once we get over that, it tends to be a little more stressful for us, because we have to follow all these laws we make up. We have to remember all these names and faces. It's just a lot of work for the brain.